World War Mine. Luther, the incomparable Luther Vandross, and Cheryl Lynn. Dr. Doug here with you on a Wednesday. It's about 15 after the hour. We're having a fascinating conversation today about a walk on the river with Andar, Logic, and Leslie. They're here talking about that. So welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
So we were talking a little bit about, you wanted to talk about some of the places that you actually visited and filmed and around the city that were interesting and significant to the African American culture.
Yeah, we were just talking about how in documenting the history, it's not just on the east side. Of course, when you look on the east side, you have the Carter Cultural Center. You have some of the first funeral homes, like Carter Taylor Mortuary was established there. You had the St. Paul Square, which was named after St. Paul Methodist Church.
Right.
So you're looking mainly on the east side, but then you had pockets of African American communities on the west side and also on the north side. And in the film, we try to bring this information out and show you kind of the movement pattern, but also some of the things that took place in these various areas. Like on the west side, in the film, we want to share information about a school that was developed by a lady named Dolores Linton.
Okay. And who was she?
Dolores Linton. She was a school teacher.
Okay.
That came here in around 1931.
Wow.
And she saw a need for educational school there on the west side because it was not available, and she established the school. And that school stayed in existence probably over a good 30, 40 years until desegregation. So
wow.
It was, it was those kind of things that we want to share in the film that shows how African Americans were inspired to create institutions, communities, programs. We have, of course, when you think about Miss Myra Davis Hemmings, who was one of the founders of the Delta sorority.
Wow.
And she lived here, came here to San Antonio, taught at Phyllis Wheatley High School, and also started a theater group, her and her husband, and they made films here in San Antonio.
Really?
Yes. So, it's those kind of
How did you find that out?
Now, it's out there because people was telling us about it. We didn't know about it now. We just babies coming on the scene. But people was telling some of the elders, as a matter of fact, I think Miss Nettie Hinton and Mr. D.L. Grant talked about it. So we had people who was telling us about these various things that, of course, we didn't have any knowledge of. But as we talked and researched, it was very interesting to hear about these people and the contributions they made. And then just one other person I thought was very interesting was Miss Mattie Landry.
Okay, and who's she?
She was a lady that started the Camp Founders Girls. At the time, they had the Camp Fire Girls.
Right.
Which was segregated.
Right.
So she started the Camp Founders Girls, but it was a number of young ladies who went to that camp that was inspired by the experience they had with Miss Landry.
Oh, wow.
So Miss Nettie Hinton talked about that experience of going to that camp. And I can't.
Miss Gaynell Gaynor.
Yeah, Miss Gaynell Gaynor talked about it. So it was those kind of stories that inspired us.
Wow, that's amazing. So you talked about. Tell me about some of the ministers and that you talk about, because that's a big thing here in San Antonio. A lot of the African American religious community. If there was a place where there seemed to be a lot of leaders who have come around and tried to help the community, seem to have come from that genre there. So what did you think? What did you find out about that? How did that come about?
Now that's very true. Of course we talked earlier about Reverend Black.
Right.
Carl Black, and of course he came out of what is Mount Zion.
Right.
And then that's the same church that Mario Salas came out of.
Right. Yes.
Of course, Reverend Black served as city council representative.
Yes, he did.
In District 2.
Yes, he for quite a time.
And then we come to find out Reverend James from Second Baptist Church was the first black elected to city council in San Antonio.
Excuse me.
So, the church has played a significant role in the just development of the community, but creating leadership in San Antonio, in the area. So I think that people are going to be inspired by some of the stories that come out of the church and some of the church development and things that they put in place. Because I was just looking at, it was Shiloh. It was a church, Shiloh. It's still in existence now. but they was talked about how they had went to an area where there was very little development, and it was because they went further east on the east side, because the east side wasn't always developed. It was went further east, and they really pushed the city to bring in what the city foundation was, sewer system, water system, to really help develop the area.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, the infrastructure. And it was because of the church movement and going into that area, because they said, well, there's no church here and the people are here. So they organized the church, but it was the church that kind of pushed forward the foundation of the infrastructure.
Wow. So, Elijah, what's the most interesting contribution that you found in the documentary?
I think my favorite story is probably the story of Charles Bellinger.
Okay.
Because he contributed and he did so much for the East Side. Charles Bellinger basically was a political boss. At one point in time, to be able to vote, you had to pay a poll tax.
That's right.
Charles Bellinger, on the East Side, if families weren't able to pay the poll tax, he paid the poll tax, and he paid it for many communities,
Wow.
which gave him a lot of political clout here in the city. He also, when banks would not finance businesses, he set up a loan system where people could borrow money to start businesses on the East Side and in the black community.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
What did he do? What was his occupation?
He was a gambling man. That's how he first came here. But he was a business owner after that. He transferred that money that he made from gambling into 2 cab companies, a real estate firm that he owned.
Wow.
He owned a plethora of businesses on the East Side. And at one point, he was said to be the richest black man in Texas.
Really?
Yes.
You know what's interesting? It's interesting how a lot of these things that we've had guests on these lunch and learn things, because you talked about how Mr. Bellinger created a loan system for people. We had a gentleman here who was the president of the Hebrew Free Loan Association, and I just was so bizarre. I never heard of it before, but when you look at how the Jewish community, one of the things that they do, they have a system where if you become destitute or you have real serious issues, you can go to this organization, you can borrow money, and because the Bible says that charging a duty is against the law, so the loans are free, so you don't have to pay any interest. You just pay back the principal amount that you borrowed. And so, and they've been there. They're a national organization, and so it's just amazing that how the things that people can do when they work together. So, and I think it's one of the things. Hopefully, one of the things that this movie does, this documentary does, it gets people in the African American community to think about things like that, because there are a lot of really talented and wealthy African Americans in the city, and one of the things we need to do is see what we can do to try to help each other out, and maybe this will bring back some of that kind of sense of community, if you will.
Yes, and I think that's important, because the stories that we share, hopefully that will inspire us and instruct us, because at one time when we did have those kind of communities and we had people who made great contributions, and understanding how they brought their resources, how Black African Americans brought their resources together.
Right.
And to piggyback, just for example, off the Charlie Ballinger, his son was Velma Ballinger, and he was of course, the founder and editor of the Register newspaper, which was really the voice of the African American community for a long time. But it's when you have resources like that, and I think what comes across in the film, when you have resources, intellectual resources,
right,
you have monetary resources, you have time, and people bring those resources together, you see the development of communities, of institutions that respond to the needs of the collective, of the people.
Right.
And I'm hoping, and we're hoping, that this film will kind of demonstrate that historically has been done, and if we say we need those kind of things today, it can be done again.
So Leslie, tell me a little bit about your favorite part of the project.
I think it's just hearing the stories. I actually have not seen the finished film.
Oh, you
They've
haven't?
only shown me the most recent version, but it's so that they're holding that until the actual premiere.
That's
so
awesome.
I'm definitely going to be there. But I really just think it's kind of to what they're talking about. Capturing history to me is so important. I come from a background where stories are lost from my family, and it's so important to try to start the dialogue. So as they're asking different people in the community to tell us their stories, my hope is, and it's even inspired me to, and I am not African American, but I have a history.
Absolutely.
I should be asking my family and my greater community, what are the stories that I don't know that help build the part of the fabric that I'm part of? So I think it really just inspires you to learn more about yourself and learn more about the people around you. And
Right.
that may sound like, wow, that's not necessarily what you're going to see on the film, but that's what I take away from it afterward. Is I'm hearing stories and it makes me ask questions.
Well, and
more.
because that I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things, I mean, that's another aspect of San Antonio. The Jewish community is, even though it's small, it's a huge contributor to the city and as far as the services that the community provides, and nobody knows about some of the things that they've done and how the things they contribute to, the things that they've built, and so.
It's a hard project. Somebody, when you say, well, why does nobody know? Why hasn't it been written down? You can ask these two gentlemen. It's hard work. It's a lot of work to find the information, to find the right resources, to validate the information, to make sure it's accurate. It's a lot of work, and so people have to be willing to put the time in and the effort in, and that's why I think it's phenomenal that we're capturing such a broad span in the Black community's history in San Antonio.
So Ladu, what do you do professionally?
Professionally, I do video production and online marketing.
What's the name of your company?
9 Logic, the number 9 in the word logic.
Okay, and Andar, what do you do professionally?
Business owner. We operate a bookstore, a mobile bookstore. We sell African American literature, T-shirts, all kind of cultural products. So
You have a mobile
bookstore. Yes, sir. We go wherever you want to read. We will be there.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. I didn't know about either of those. You guys have cards and things?
Yes.
All right. So one of the things we're going to do, we're going to play a song.
Yes.
We come back. I want you guys to share your business, your professional things, how to get in contact with you, and we'll talk about the movie, when it's going to be shown, and what people need to do to get tickets and that kind of stuff. How's that sound?
Absolutely.
Dr. Doug here with you, KROV, the heart and soul of San Antonio. We'll be right back.